Hi guys, I'm very excited because today I have Dr. Erica Ward with me, who is our academic director at Loop Abroad. So she's the person responsible for designing the amazing programs we have on offer all around the world. She is also an elephant vet over in Thailand, where she moved in 2013, and I thought I would get her on to discuss her career path from vet school, what she thought she wanted to do then to where she is now, how she got there, some of her most memorable elephant patients over in Thailand, and what she loves about teaching our projects, as well as why she would recommend to all of you that you come along on one, see for yourself, and see what opportunities it opens up for you. So I really hope you enjoy the talk as much as I had recording it, and stay tuned. Your work is a huge inspiration to many people all over the world, including myself, and you have a very interesting career path. So I thought we could talk a little bit about that for the students to get to know more about you, for those who don't. I thought we'd start right back at the back. So during university, when you were studying, and how you sort of came to be where you are now and the steps that you took to get there.
Sure. So I always knew I wanted to be a vet, and I think my path started even before I went to university. So I did a couple trips with family when I was in high school and even before that. And every time I'd always be looking for opportunities to go to a vet clinic or just to see what a vet does. And I was lucky in getting a little bit of that. And I set myself up a little bit. Knew I wanted to be a vet, so I went to Michigan State University, where we have a really good vet school. And so I got in. I didn't apply to any colleges, actually, just that university. And when I got in, I was like, that's where I'm going. And so I went there, and then I recommend that everyone who wants to become a vet joins the pre-vet club at their school. I feel like I went in and I didn't really know what it was to be for that path, and it really helped me. And they had a lot of opportunities where we could get a lot of animal hours and vet hours, and had guest speakers, so it kind of started opening up my world to what kind of options were out there. And I also started to track my vet hours. I did a couple study abroads, and I loved the study, so I did a trip to Egypt, and I also applied to vet school after my second year, and that was because one of my mentors in the pre-vet club had suggested I do that. And then I found out while I was on a study abroad in New Zealand that I got in. So I kind of had switched schools to a school in New Zealand and was going to finish up my undergrad there, but got into vet school. So I came back after a semester and started vet school. At that point, I was thinking small animal or equine or a cow vet. And when I started vet school, I thought actually an equine vet. So I was working with some equine vets in New Zealand and really loved that. So it's a long story, but I decided to go to Thailand after my last summer. So at Michigan State, we had 2 summers off, and then we went right into clinics and did clinics until graduation after 4 years. So my last summer, I ended up organizing a trip for pre-vet students to go to Thailand, and it was a 2-week volunteer trip and a 2-week adventure tour. And I fell in love with elephants at that point. And it's kind of funny because before that, I didn't really have a strong affinity to elephants. They were just, I really wanted to go to Thailand for some reason. And the elephants are what kept me going back. So I fell in love with it there. Right when I got back home, I started planning more to go back. And with the help of a lot of my classmates, I was able to rearrange my clinical rotation schedule. So I spent 3 months in Thailand. And I spent most of that at an elephant sanctuary. And then I went back one more time for a Christmas break. And at that point, they offered me a position to come after I graduated. So it was a very different path. Most people that work with zoo animals after vet school do an internship, perhaps a residency. Some just go right in and get experience. So it was a different path for me to just move there. I did have a very good mentor when I first moved, so that was very lucky. And he kind of taught me the ropes and taught me basically everything I knew, because I went in coming with very little knowledge. I loved that position that I had there. I had that job for a few years, and then I joined Loop Abroad in 2016. And one of my favorite things when I was at the Elephant Sanctuary was teaching students who would come. We had a program where vet students could come and shadow me, and I worked with other volunteers as well, and I really loved that aspect. So working with Loop, I really enjoyed developing the programs, working with students, getting an opportunity to travel and work with other people that were passionate about what they knew, and kind of setting the framework for this whole thing to get set up.
It's so amazing that traveling and having these experiences abroad so directly impacted your career path, because I know that you grew up on a farm or with a lot of animals and horses and cows, as you mentioned. So it was easy to see in the direction that you were thinking that you were going, and then a study abroad program or just traveling was able to open your eyes to the opportunities and ignite passions that you didn't know that you had. So I had a similar experience. I knew that I always wanted to work with wildlife, but when I started traveling during vet school and doing specific placements all over the world, I really saw the range of opportunities available, and once I'd seen that, couldn't imagine going back anywhere else. So yeah, I think what you mentioned about getting different experiences, and also the pre-veterinary club, can be really important in meeting and talking to other people about their ideas, having guest speakers come in, and just careers that you didn't know existed are available to you, and trying things that you wouldn't know, wouldn't think that would interest you, suddenly do. So it's really interesting to me.
Yeah, I agree too. Like you can't, I don't turn down opportunities as if I can, or if I can do it, then I do it, because you never know what an opportunity is going to lead to.
Absolutely, and that's one of the main things I always recommend to vet students. I mean, you often enter vet school with an idea of what you think you want to do. You have no idea how that might change. It may not, but I tried to take as many opportunities as possible, even in the areas I didn't think I was interested in, because it turns out you might have a huge interest. And for you, it was such a dramatic change and such an interesting one, and has taken you to a very, very interesting career that perhaps you might not have had without some of those formative experiences in the early days. So yeah, it's really interesting. So I guess moving abroad after vet school was a very big leap for you. You moved to Thailand, I believe, in 2013, straight after graduation.
I did,
so,
yeah.
It's nice that you had that mentor, but were there any particular challenges associated with that? Did you ever wonder if you'd done the right thing, or did you ever have some really challenging moments with that?
Yeah, well, I think the move wasn't so difficult for me. So I remember, that's what everyone would always ask me, you're moving across the globe, and life was a little bit different there. Not that it's so different, but living at the sanctuary, it was I lived in a bamboo hut. I had electricity, but there wasn't a toilet connected to my house, and
it's very different.
It was different, and I loved it. I did spend it ended up being 6 months in total that I spent in Thailand before moving there, and I had made a lot of friends, and I think it was really the people. Of course, I had connections or had a strong affinity to the animals as well, but the people were so supportive, so they really helped. There's always been challenges, so challenges with the language barrier, or challenges with the different cultural barriers, getting used to that, and learning how to do everything right off your feet was a bit challenging. But I think the most challenging things are, for me, when I am when I lose a patient. So it can be an old elephant that I've worked with for years, and I kind of am brought in to do hospice care, something like that with her, or maybe it's a disease that you think you can get them through and they don't make it. And the hardest ones, I think, for sure, are the herpes virus cases. So with those cases, it's a terrible virus that affects young elephants, and you can try your best, but the odds are against you, and often we do lose them. And that's really challenging, especially when you work for months or years training a calf to be able to participate in the medical procedures. And then when the time comes, it just happens so quickly, and you aren't able to save them.
Yeah, that must be absolutely heartbreaking. Certainly one of the most challenging things I can imagine. Do you have a most memorable patient from your time in Thailand?
I have a few. So I have one. Yeah, so there were a few. I'd say definitely the one that impacted me the most was one of the elephants I met on my very first day to Thailand. So she was an elephant. Her name was Mei T, and she had some really bad foot abscesses, and she required daily treatment. And she did recover from that. It took years, but she was one where we spent a lot of time during our 2 weeks of volunteering, giving her foot baths and dressing her wounds. And I'm sure she didn't feel the same for me, because I was just a stranger that was there. But I think that's often what happens is people will be introduced to an animal and they feel a connection with that. And I felt a connection. I'm sure she didn't feel that back towards me, but she kind of changed my career path. So I thought of her all the time. I actually almost didn't go on the adventure tour because I wanted to stay to help with her treatments. And then she was the reason why I went back the next year and continued that path. So I really think that she changed me. And I think what was most the best thing about her, or at least the thing that really, really got me thinking about her, was that how painful her wounds must have been, but how tolerant and patient and kind she was to us. And a lot of her wounds were from the tourist industry and how much abuse she had been in the past, or just a really hard worker. Maybe perhaps her owners really did love her in the past, but they worked her really hard, and she developed a lot of injuries and deformations because of that. And how she could still be so tolerant of people after that was quite amazing. And there was another one. So some of the elephants, I think when you work with them a long time, it doesn't happen right away. But as you work every day with the same elephants, you can form bonds with them or connections. And I tried really hard to make those connections really positive. So I always used a lot of food. They love food, so we can use food as a positive reward. And so I would go around and check on all the elephants every morning. And there were a few. One of my favorites was a very stubborn elephant she was so stubborn, and I really wanted to win her over. So I spent a lot of time with her, and she was the first patient that I would work on in the morning. And she was a landmine victim. And I would give her treats every morning, and she started to lift up her foot to kind of ask for some attention. I'd rub her foot, and then I worked with her really hard when she had an eye injury to allow me. And she was so funny because she knew I was going to give her a treat. So she'd open her mouth, but use her trunk to cover her eye and just like move toward me with her mouth open. And then she would smack, I'd go to put the eye ointment in. She'd use her trunk to smack the syringe out of my hand, or the eye ointment out of my hand. And she was really sassy, but not mean. And I worked with her quite a bit to be able to get a blood sample. And even though it was really selfish of me to think this, but she would only let me take a blood sample. And I just thought that was such a privilege, and it made me feel really good, even though I felt bad for the other people that couldn't get it. Yeah.
That's really special. It's amazing the connections you can develop with the animals, especially the elephants, and how they have their own personalities. It just must be the most rewarding and beautiful creature to work with, I imagine. They're very, very special. So I guess it brings us around to Loop Abroad, and after the teaching, onto the teaching component of your career. We touched on it a little bit beforehand, but you mentioned that you got a lot of pleasure out of teaching students, especially when it came to the elephants and being able to spread awareness for the plight of the Asian elephant and their conservation issues. So what is it that you enjoy the most about teaching our students?
I feel like the students inspire me more than maybe I inspire them. So I kind of see often a lot of the students, I see how passionate they are and see kind of the fire in their eye, and they keep me going. And I love when they ask me questions, and I know that sometimes I come off as being a bit intimidating, but I really like sharing my knowledge. And I feel like sharing what I know and sharing a little bit about how the industry isn't so black and white, how there's a lot of different components into it and a lot of different factors. And that maybe is the biggest way that we can help transform the industry and improve the welfare for elephants altogether. And I love being able to work with a wide variety of students. I love when they follow up after and tell me about their experiences. Maybe they got into vet school, or perhaps a different career path that they're following, or are applying for internships and get internships working with elephants and that sort of thing. And I would say that's probably my favorite thing.
I've spoken to a lot of them, and they credit you with a lot of their experiences and the trajectory that they're taking. I know you've had a big impact on so many people, and it's really interesting that you mentioned your mentor beforehand and how much of an impact they had on you. So it's really nice that the cycle has come full circle, and you're doing the same for a lot of students, whether you see it or not, but they take so much from their experiences with you. So I, for one, was really looking forward to working with you in Australia this year, even though it seems like that may longer not happen anymore, but we will just have to see when we come together in the future. Before we wrap it up, there'll be plenty more opportunities, but a bit disappointing, but maybe next year, so we'll have to see how it all goes. Before we wrap up, I know that the travelling has had a big impact on you, the study abroad programs. It's very clear to see what it's done to your career. What would be the main reasons you would recommend a student come on one of our programs and the benefits they can get, not only in the moment, but for their future career paths, as it might have done for you?
I think studying abroad, and especially with our Loop Abroad programs, it offers a unique experience for students to come and to get really great hands-on veterinary experience and meet other people as well. whether it's the vets that they're working with or the host organization or the other students. And you never know what these experiences, what doors they'll open up in the future. And I think that our programs are a great way for students to set themselves apart from others when they're applying to whatever continued education program they're going for, whether it be vet school or an internship at a zoo or something like that. And so it's just something else to add to their resume and their applications. And the experiences can open up doors in the future.
I couldn't agree more. And I guess this is a bit of a biased question, but do you have a favorite program, or is it too hard to say, or is it Thailand?
Okay, that's hard because I ask a lot of students that we have students that participate in many different programs and they always give a different answer. And so of course, I think that a lot of our students, our most popular program is the one to Thailand for pre-veterinary students, where they spend a week with the dogs and cats and a week with the elephants, and they get a lot of hands-on experience with the dogs and cats as well, because those are domestic species that they can work with. I personally love teaching the elephant management medicine course that I teach for vet students. So personally, that's my favorite one to do. When I joined Loop, I developed the vet semester abroad program, and so that's our 14-week program, 13 to 14-week program, and that is actually my favorite program. So if a student is going to choose one program, I would choose the vet school vet program, because that one really helps get you prepared for vet school. It's kind of like a mini vet school. So the experiences that you walk away from after spending 14 weeks practicing vet med, we have different vets come from all over different specialties to teach these, and I think those skills that they learned you cannot match in a 2-week program.
Thank you so much for having a chat with me today. So I really hope you enjoy the talk and have as much fun watching it as I had recording it. Please let me know if you have any questions for Erica, and otherwise enjoy.